I knew something was wrong the moment the door slammed above me. No light. No windows. Just concrete walls and the sound of metal locking into place. I pressed my hands against the room, hoping it was a mistake. But the cold told me the truth. This wasn't a basement. It was a cage. A place someone had built on purpose. I listened for footsteps, for a voice, for anything, and all I heard was my own heartbeat, getting faster. But the worst part? The man who put me here was someone I trusted. People like to imagine childhood as soft and safe cartoons in the morning, warm dinners at night, adults who always know what to do. My childhood didn't feel like that. I wasn't completely alone. I had a mother. I had people around me. But most of the time, I felt like a background character in my own life. I learned early not to ask for too much, not to cry too loud, not to be a problem. You become very good at being small when the world around you is too big and too busy. There was one person, though, who always seemed to notice me. His name was John Esposito. He lived nearby. He wasn't family, but he was close enough that everyone treated him like he was. He'd show up with snacks, little gifts, offers to take me places. He was the nice guy adults trusted without thinking. When other people were stressed or distracted, he was patient. When others snapped at me, he stayed calm. He asked questions about my day. He listened. Looking back, that was the first trap. Predators don't always come out of the dark with snarling teeth. Sometimes they walk in through the front door with a friendly smile and a bag of candy. I didn't see it. Nobody did. To me, he was the adult who made time for me when no one else did. And when you're a child starving for attention, even poisoned food can taste sweet. I had no idea that the same man who made me feel seen would soon make me feel invisible to the whole world. The day everything changed didn't start like a horror story. It started like a hopeful one. It was late December. 2 days before my 10th birthday. Snow on the ground, gray sky, that strange quiet you get in winter when everything feels muted. I woke up wondering if anyone would remember. Would there be a cake this year? A present? Anything? My mom was busy, like always. Her boyfriend moved around the apartment, already annoyed about something small. They had problems bigger than my birthday. So I did what I usually did. I stayed out of the way and tried not to expect much. Then there was a knock at the door. When I saw John standing there, something in my chest lifted. He smiled, that same familiar, careful smile. He looked at me first, not at the adults behind me. "Hey, birthday girl," he said. "Want to go pick out a present? Just you and me? We can get something nice, maybe stop by the store." He said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like he was doing everyone a favor. My mom didn't hesitate. She didn't ask many questions. She didn't ask where or how long. She just looked relieved that someone else was taking responsibility for a while. "Sure," she said. "Go with John." That was it. No big speech. No warning. I slipped on my shoes, grabbed my coat, and followed him out the door. I thought I was going shopping. I thought I was being treated. I thought, for once, this day might actually be about me. I didn't know that in a few hours, my face would be on TV screens, flyers, and news reports. That people would be saying the word missing with my name attached. I didn't know that this birthday gift was the doorway into a nightmare. The car felt normal. That's the part that bothers me when I look back. Nothing about the moment felt cinematic or dramatic. Just a quiet drive on familiar streets. We passed the usual places, stores, houses, parking lots I recognized. I kept waiting for him to turn into a shopping center or a toy store. He didn't. At first I thought maybe he knew a special place. Some secret shop I hadn't heard of. But then we took a road I didn't recognize. And another. And another. The further we drove, the more the world outside the window started to feel wrong. Less familiar. Less safe. Where are we going? I finally asked. He didn't look at me. He just kept his eyes on the road. Don't worry, he said. I know a good place. You're going to like it. His voice was calm. Too calm. I tried to tell myself it was fine. He'd taken me places before. Everyone trusted him. If he were dangerous, wouldn't someone have noticed? We eventually pulled into a driveway I knew his. I'd been there before. Played games. Watched TV. It wasn't unusual for me to be there alone with him. So why did my stomach feel so tight this time? He shut off the engine and looked at me. Come on, he said quietly. I've got something to show you first. Something. Those small, vague words sound harmless. But sometimes it's the small, vague things that change everything. I followed him inside. Because that's what I'd always done. Because no one had ever told me I had the right to say no. If I had known what waited below that house, I would have run until my lungs burned. But I didn't know. Not yet. The inside of his house looked the same as always, cluttered, dimly lit, normal in that messy adult way. That normal was the last comfort I had. He led me through the living room. No decorations. No wrapped gift. No sign of anything birthday related. I hesitated. Are we still going shopping? I asked. In a bit, he said. I just need your help with something first. He moved a piece of furniture, then tugged at a rug on the floor. Underneath was not more carpet. Not wood. Just a solid panel. He lifted it. Beneath the panel was a dark opening. A staircase leading down. Every instinct inside me went on high alert. It didn't look like a basement. It looked like a hole. A hole someone wanted to keep hidden. I stood there, frozen at the top, staring into the black space below. I don't want to go down there, I said quietly. He smiled, like I had said something funny. It's okay, he murmured. I'll be with you. It's safe. Come on. He stepped down first, disappearing into the shadows. Then he turned and looked up at me. Come on, he repeated. His tone didn't leave room for no. I remember my hands shaking as I grabbed the rail. One step. Another. The air grew colder as I went down. The light from the living room stretched weaker and weaker behind me. Halfway down, I thought about turning back. But by the time I found the courage to think the word run, he was already behind me. His body blocked the way back up. There was only one direction left to go. When we reached the bottom, he moved past me, reached up, and pulled the door shut. The last sliver of daylight vanished. Then came the sound of a lock sliding into place. That sound. I still hear it in my dreams. When your world narrows to 4 small walls, your brain fights it. It refuses to accept that this is real. At first, I told myself it was temporary. A strange errand. A weird favor. Something adults understood and I didn't. But the room didn't feel temporary. It felt permanent. Concrete walls. A thin mattress on the floor. A bucket in the corner. A single light. And in the upper corner, near the ceiling, a camera. I didn't know much about surveillance back then. But I knew what it meant to be watched. He told me to sit. His voice was soft, too soft. "You're safe here," he said. "No one's going to hurt you down here. Not like out there." Out there meant my real life. My home. My school. My world. He twisted my reality with a few simple sentences. "You're special," he went on. "You're important to me. I just want to take care of you. People don't treat you right." "I do." I didn't answer. My throat felt tight. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard it hurt. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't threatening. But everything in his tone said the same thing: "You belong to me now." He gave me food. A drink. Told me to rest. Then he walked up the stairs. His footsteps faded. The lock clicked again. I waited. 4 minutes. 4 hours. I don't know. Maybe I was waiting to wake up. But the cold under my bare feet, the smell of the concrete, the silence. They all told the same story. This wasn't a strange favor. Or a misunderstanding. Or a test. I had been taken. And no one knew where I was. Time doesn't behave normally in a room without windows. Minutes stretch. Hours collapse. You lose track so quickly that eventually you stop trying to count. I watched the light. On. Off. On again. I listened for his footsteps. Sometimes they came quickly, heavy, hurried. Sometimes they were slow and deliberate, each step echoing through the ceiling. When he came down, he acted like we were part of some secret arrangement. He'd bring food and talk as if this was a game. "Are you comfortable? Do you like it down here? It's our place. Our place." Those 2 words made something in my spine turn to ice. I asked about my mom. He shrugged. "You'll see her again," he said. "Eventually. But they don't appreciate you the way I do. They don't deserve you yet." He framed his crime as protection. His control as love. That's how people like him work. They rewrite the story so many times that if you're not careful, you start to forget what page you were on when it all began. I tried to hold on to the details of my real life, my room, my bed, my school, my friends, but every day those images blurred a little more. What stayed clear was the room, the mattress, the bucket, the camera's cold, black eye, and the knowledge that whenever I looked up, someone might be watching. Fear isn't always screaming in panic. Sometimes it's quiet routines that wrap around you like chains. After a while, there was a pattern to our days. Or what I thought were days. He'd come down with food at mealtimes. Breakfast. Lunch. Dinner. He always called them that, as if naming them made things normal. He'd ask questions about how I felt, what I was thinking. Not because he cared, but because control needs information. If I cried, he'd talk softly. If I was silent, he'd fill the silence himself. "You're lucky, you know," he'd say. "The world outside is ugly. People hurt you out there. They lie. They abandon you. Down here, you have me. I'll never leave you. I'll never let anyone take you away." Imagine hearing that in a room with no door you can open, no window you can climb through, no phone you can use to call for help. It sounds less like comfort and more like a promise you never wanted. I started to realize that every kind act had a hook in it. The food. The blankets. The soft tone. Nothing was free. Everything was reinforcement. You're mine. You're staying. Some nights, when the light was off, I'd whisper to myself. Not prayers exactly. Just reminders. My name is Katie. I'm 10. I have a life out there. Because when you're buried underground long enough, you start to feel like maybe you were never meant to exist anywhere else. What I didn't know, what I couldn't see, was that while I was sitting in that small concrete room, the world above was on fire with my name. The moment I didn't come home, the clock started. Police were called. Questions were asked. The last people who'd seen me alive were interrogated. My face was printed on flyers. Parents stared at the TV in horror, whispering, "That could have been my child." Reporters stood in the cold, talking about timelines, persons of interest, and critical hours. Above me, less than a house length away, search teams walked through neighborhoods and fields. Volunteers called my name into open air, believing sound alone could pull me back. John watched those news reports. He listened to those appeals for information. He saw my picture everywhere. And then he went downstairs to feed the real girl behind the grainy photo. He never told me about the searches. He never mentioned the chaos. But sometimes, I felt the world. A distant vibration through the walls when trucks moved equipment. A faint rumble when many feet walked near the house. The world was searching. But the place they were looking hardest was the one place I could never be seen. Underground. Under his control. You can only cry for so long before your body runs out of tears. After that, survival becomes quiet. I started to notice things. The way the door sounded when it opened versus when it closed. The pattern of his footsteps, how often he came, how long he stayed. Small details in the room, bolts, seams, joints in the concrete. Kids aren't given enough credit. We're told we're fragile. But when there's no other choice, a child's mind becomes incredibly sharp. One day, after he left, I pushed against a section of the wall where a pipe ran through. The echo sounded different, hollow instead of solid. It wasn't a way out. But it was information. Another time, I timed his visits by counting slowly in my head. I lost track often, but I began to sense rhythms. Sometimes he came quickly again, clearly anxious. Sometimes there were long stretches of nothing. I didn't know why yet. But later, I would understand those long stretches. That was pressure from outside. That was the world closing in. Inside the room, all I had were tiny clues and a stubborn refusal to disappear. I didn't know how I would get out. I didn't even know if I would. But I knew this: if there was ever a chance to move, to speak, to signal, I had to be ready. Because there are moments in survival that come only once. And if you miss them, they never come back. As the days passed, more than a week, then more, something in him began to crack. His footsteps upstairs became louder, less controlled. He paced. I heard doors slam. Drawers. Voices, sometimes faint and muffled. One day he came down looking different. Not calm. Not collected. Nervous. His hands shook a little when he set down my food. He didn't meet my eyes at first. "They're bothering me," he muttered finally. Police. Reporters. Idiots who think they know something. They keep coming. Asking questions. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. They don't know anything. They have no idea you're right here. Right here. The words made my skin crawl. But behind the fear, something else flickered. If they were bothering him, it meant they weren't giving up. It meant my name was still in their mouths. It meant I wasn't just a faded photo on a table somewhere. He kept talking, more to himself than to me. They're looking in the wrong places. Wasting their time. They think they're smart. They're not. I planned this. He needed to believe he was in control. But everything about him, the twitch in his jaw, the way his voice kept rising and falling, told a different story. Pressure was building. He was being watched. He was being questioned. He was cracking. And men like him, they don't shatter quietly. I didn't know when or how it would happen. But I knew this: if the outside world kept pushing, eventually, this sealed room would no longer be able to keep the truth buried. He started coming downstairs more often. But staying for less time. Short visits. Half-finished sentences. Eyes that kept darting toward the ceiling, like he could see the world closing in above us. Sometimes he'd sit on the edge of the mattress and just stare at the wall. "They keep asking where you are," he said once. "Your name is everywhere. Everyone suddenly cares so much." He said everyone like it was an insult. I didn't know whether to feel comforted or terrified. Part of me pictured my face on TV, on posters, on bulletin boards at grocery stores. Another part of me wondered how long people would keep looking before they quietly moved on. He tried to turn even that into a weapon. "Do you really think they care?" he asked. "In a few weeks, they'll forget. They always forget. But I won't. I kept you. I chose you. Chosen. As if being hidden underground was a prize. He needed me to believe there was no world left beyond this room. No path home. No life outside of him. Some days, the fear almost made that life feel true. But then there were moments, small, stubborn sparks, where I refused to accept his version of the story. I would imagine the outside world moving, people talking, police working, someone refusing to give up on me. I didn't know who. I didn't know how. I just clung to the idea that somewhere out there, someone was still saying my name like it mattered. And that tiny thread of belief kept me from disappearing inside his version of reality. The first real crack appeared not in a wall, but in his voice. He came downstairs one day looking more shaken than I'd ever seen him. No practiced calm. No rehearsed lines. "They searched my place today," he said abruptly. My heart skipped. "What?" I whispered. He didn't answer right away. He paced back and forth in the small space near the door, too agitated to even look at me. "They came with questions. They think they're clever. Looking in closets, under beds. Asking where I was, who I saw, what I did that day." He stopped and finally met my eyes. "But they didn't find you," he said. There was a twisted pride in his tone. "Not even close. They have no idea what's right under their feet." He was wrong. They were closer than he knew. I felt something like electricity move through me. Fear, hope, disbelief all tangled together. If they had been in the house once, they could come back. If they had suspected him enough to search, they could suspect him enough to do it again. He kept talking, almost frantically. "I told them I barely see you. That your family's always moving you around, leaving you places. I made them doubt. They want to think it's someone else. They always want a monster, not a neighbor. The irony of that sentence still stings. He wasn't a monster from a storybook. He wasn't a shadow in the woods. He was a man everybody knew. The kind they trusted with their child. And that was the most frightening part. The worst danger in my life had never been a stranger on a dark street. It was the friendly face who already had a key to the door. After that search, something shifted. He became more restless. More paranoid. He'd go upstairs for long stretches and come back sweating, his shirt slightly damp, his breathing uneven. He'd talk about the police like they were insects, annoying, but not truly dangerous. But the more he insisted he was safe, the more obvious it became that he didn't believe it himself. "People are calling all the time," he muttered. "They think they know something. They see my picture on the news and decide I must be involved. They don't even understand what's really going on." What was really going on in his mind? Some twisted fantasy where he was the hero and I was the rescued one, hidden away from a cruel world? Abusers rarely see themselves as villains. They rewrite the script to make themselves look like saviors. One day, he came down carrying less than usual. No food. No drink. Just himself. He leaned against the wall, rubbing his temples. "I might have to make a decision," he said quietly. "If this gets worse. If they keep digging." He didn't finish the sentence. And I didn't dare ask what he meant. But my mind went wild with possibilities I didn't want to picture. Would he run? Would he move me somewhere else? Or would he decide that if he couldn't keep me, no one could? I sat perfectly still, afraid that any movement might push him toward one of those choices. He finally left again, leaving me with nothing but those unfinished words. I might have to make a decision. Whatever that decision was, I knew one thing for certain: I didn't want my fate resting in his hands. The day everything truly turned began like any other. Light on. Silence. The familiar chill of the concrete floor under my feet. No footsteps yet. No door opening. Just waiting. You'd think living underground would numb you to uncertainty. It doesn't. It amplifies it. Hours seemed to pass. Or maybe it was less. Time had stopped being reliable long ago. I heard faint noises above, more than just one person moving. Multiple footsteps. Voices. My heart thudded so hard it made my fingers tremble. Were they friends of his? Strangers? Police? Every scenario came with a different kind of fear. Then there was a new sound, heavy, deliberate. Furniture scraping. Something being moved across the floor. The hidden entrance. They were near it. I held my breath. If they were strangers he trusted, he would have come down already, checking on me, making sure I was silent. But he didn't. Instead, the voices above grew sharper. More purposeful. I couldn't make out the words. Just the tone. Commanding. Focused. Then came a sound I recognized, the panel above being pulled back. I stared at the door in front of me. The same door that had closed, over and over, trapping me in darkness. Only this time. The sound was different. Less controlled. Less rehearsed. Less like a captor. More like a rescue. When the door finally opened, the light above was so bright it felt like a physical force. I squinted, raising a hand to shield my eyes. For a second, I thought I might be dreaming, some elaborate fantasy my mind had created to escape. Then I heard it. Police. It's okay. We're here. Are you Katie? My name. My real name. Not the one he twisted, not the pet phrases he used. Katie. I tried to speak, but my voice came out small and hoarse. Yes, I whispered. I'm Katie. Multiple figures crowded the narrow doorway, dark shapes against a square of blinding light. One of them moved carefully down the stairs, his hands visible, palms open. You're safe now, he said. We've got you. We're going to get you out of here. Safe. I didn't know what that word meant anymore. But I clung to it like a life raft. He offered me his hand. For a second, I hesitated. Every adult hand I trusted lately had led me deeper into danger. But something in his eyes. Steady, focused, not greedy or possessive. Made me take it. My legs shook as I stood. The air on the staircase felt different on the way up, less cold, less stale. With every step, the room behind me shrank, like it was finally losing its hold. At the top, the rest of the officers stepped back to give us space. The living room looked foreign, even though I'd been there before. Too bright. Too open. I saw flashes, police equipment, radios, bags, cameras. Someone wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. Another gently asked my name again, my age, if I was hurt. Questions tumbled over each other. But one thing cut through the noise. You're going home, someone said softly. Home. The word didn't feel real yet. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to imagine it. They didn't take me home right away. Rescue doesn't end at the doorway. It just changes location. First was the ride in the police car. I watched buildings blur by through the window, disoriented. Lights. Signs. Trees. All the ordinary things I used to ignore felt unreal and overwhelming. People talked to me gently, but their faces were tight with anger and relief. At the hospital, everything moved fast and slow at the same time. Bright lights. White coats. Gloves snapping. Monitors beeping softly. They checked my body, my vitals, my injuries. They spoke in codes and medical terms over my head. I answered what I could. Sometimes I didn't know how. Sometimes I didn't want to. They asked about him. About the room. About how long I thought I'd been down there. My sense of time was broken glass. Pieces everywhere, none fitting together cleanly. I heard fragments of conversations outside my room. 17 days. Underground bunker. Hidden under the house. She's lucky to be alive. Lucky. That word settled on me strangely. I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow. Like part of me was still in that room, sitting on the mattress, listening for footsteps. But I was alive. And for everyone around me, that was a miracle. For me, it was just the beginning of a new kind of survival. Eventually, there were reunions. Faces I knew. Arms around me. Crying. Apologies. My mother hugged me like she never planned to let go again. She cried into my hair, saying she was sorry, saying she'd been so scared, saying she thought I was gone. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to collapse into her and sob. Another part of me felt distant, like I was watching someone else's life from the outside. Trauma has a way of putting glass between you and the world. Everyone wanted to know how I was. What I remembered. What he had done. They meant well. But every question was a reminder. Reporters wanted interviews. Strangers sent messages. People called me brave, strong, a miracle. They turned me into a symbol, a story to tell their children as a warning, to each other as a shock. But I wasn't a symbol. I was a 10-year-old girl who had spent 17 days in a concrete room built by a man she once trusted. I didn't feel like a miracle. I felt like a puzzle no one knew how to solve. Healing is not a straight line. There were nightmares, of course. Doors slamming. Lights going out. Footsteps approaching. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, certain I was back underground. Sometimes, sudden silence scared me more than noise. Other times, loud sounds sent me scrambling. Therapy helped. Slowly. At first, I didn't want to talk. I had spent so long being watched and controlled that talking about what happened felt like giving it more power. But gradually, I realized something important: silence had been his weapon. Breaking that silence could be mine. I started telling the story in pieces. Not all at once. Not in a dramatic speech. Just small truths, laid out one by one. How it felt when the door shut. How the air smelled. How his voice sounded when he tried to pretend he was my protector. Those details mattered. Not just for the people trying to understand, but for me to remember that it was real. And also over. Years later, I would tell the story more publicly. Not because I wanted attention, but because I knew there were other kids out there living in their own versions of that room. Children with predators who looked like nice guys. Children whose fear was invisible to the people around them. If my voice could help even one of them be believed sooner, then breaking my silence was worth it. People sometimes ask me what evil looks like. They expect me to describe a monster. Sharp teeth. Glowing eyes. A stranger lurking in an alley. But that's not what I remember. Evil, in my story, wore regular clothes. Drove a regular car. Smiled at neighbors. Helped with small errands. Evil was the nice guy who offered to help a stressed mother by taking her child out for a birthday treat. That's the part that unsettles people the most. Because if the danger looks normal, how do you protect against it? I don't have perfect answers. But I do know this: when a child says they're uncomfortable around someone, listen. When you notice an adult who is overly fixated on a specific child, pay attention. When someone seems to always be available in ways that cross invisible lines, question it. It's better to ask awkward questions than to look back later and wish you had. And if you've lived through something like this, if you've had your freedom taken, your voice ignored, your reality twisted, you are not defined by what someone else did to you. You are not just the worst thing that ever happened in your life. You are more than the room they tried to keep you in. Sometimes, I still think about that concrete room. About the way sound changed inside it. About how my own heartbeat became the loudest thing I could hear. About the moment the door opened and light rushed in like an explosion. I won't pretend everything became perfect after that. It didn't. There were scars you couldn't see. Trust that had to be rebuilt from the ground up. Days where I felt strong, and days where I barely felt real. But I survived. And survival isn't just about not dying. It's about claiming your life back from the person who tried to own it. He had 17 days where he controlled my world. I have had years since then where he does not. That's what I hold on to. If you're watching this and you've been through something dark, whether it matches my story or looks completely different, hear this: what was done to you is not who you are. The room they tried to keep you in, whether it was a real place or a mental one, doesn't get to define the rest of your life. You do. I was a 10-year-old girl trapped underground. Now I'm a woman who speaks from a place they never intended me to reach. Up here. In the light. And if you feel like you're still underground, still waiting for that door to open, hold on. Sometimes the world doesn't move fast enough. Sometimes it fails. But sometimes, someone keeps saying your name, keeps looking, keeps pushing until the lock finally breaks. This story is mine. My fear. My survival. And no matter how deep they buried me, I made it back.